Single dad was having tea alone, until old woman whispered, "Pretend you're my daughter's fiancé." Marcus hadn't cried in 3 years, not since the funeral, not through the sleepless nights, not even when his daughter asked why mommy wasn't coming back. But sitting in that small cafe on a gray Tuesday afternoon, watching other families laugh together while he stirred cold tea with trembling hands, he felt the familiar ache threatening to break through. He'd promised himself he'd be stronger than this. He'd promised Sarah he'd keep going. Yet here he was, a 34-year-old widower who'd forgotten what it felt like to be anything other than exhausted and alone. Then a weathered hand touched his shoulder, and a desperate whisper changed everything. Marcus had only stopped at the corner brew cafe because his daughter Emma was at a birthday party and he had 2 hours to kill. 2 hours where he didn't have to be dad, didn't have to smile through the pain, didn't have to pretend that single parenthood wasn't slowly crushing him. The cafe was warm, filled with the comfortable hum of conversation and the rich aroma of fresh coffee. He'd chosen a table by the window, watching the autumn leaves tumble across the parking lot, when he noticed the elderly woman at the next table. She was perhaps 70, with silver hair pinned neatly back and worried eyes that kept darting toward the entrance. Her hands twisted a napkin nervously, and Marcus recognized that look. He'd worn it himself countless times. The look of someone barely holding it together. When she suddenly leaned toward him, Marcus startled. "Please," she whispered urgently, her voice cracking. "I need your help. My daughter is about to walk through that door, and I told her you're her fiancé." Marcus blinked, certain he'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I know this is crazy. I know I have no right to ask. But my daughter Rebecca, she's been through so much. She moved across the country 5 years ago after a terrible divorce. We barely spoke. She rebuilt her life, found someone she loved, got engaged. I was supposed to meet him today." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But he died 3 weeks ago. Heart attack. She's devastated, and she's coming home, and I panicked and told her he was here with me because I couldn't bear to hear her sound so broken on the phone. Please, just for a few minutes. Let her believe something good exists in this world." Marcus should have said no. Any rational person would have. But something in the woman's desperate plea struck a chord deep in his chest. He knew what it meant to lose someone. He knew what it meant to want to protect your child from pain, even when it was impossible. "What's his name?" Marcus asked quietly. The relief that flooded the woman's face nearly undid him. Daniel Morrison. He was a teacher. Kind, patient. She said he loved old movies and terrible jokes. Before Marcus could respond, the cafe door opened, and a woman in her mid-30s entered. She had her mother's features but carried a heaviness Marcus recognized intimately, the weight of grief that settles into your bones and changes the way you move through the world. The elderly woman, he still didn't know her name, grabbed his hand across the table. "Rebecca, darling." Rebecca's eyes swept the cafe and landed on them. For a moment, confusion flickered across her face, then something else. Something that looked like pain and hope tangled together. Marcus stood, his heart hammering. This was wrong. This was a lie that would only cause more hurt. But then Rebecca was there, and he saw the desperate need in her eyes to believe in something, anything good, and he found himself saying, "Hi, sweetheart. We were just talking about you." The next hour unfolded like a fever dream. Marcus listened as the mother, Margaret, he learned, spoke carefully about Daniel's journey to meet her, how excited he'd been, how he'd arrived just this morning. Rebecca asked questions, and Marcus answered with vague truths about his own life, letting her fill in the gaps with memories of the man she'd lost. But then Rebecca said something that stopped his heart. "Mom told me you have a daughter from a previous marriage. That must be hard, planning a wedding while co-parenting." Marcus met Margaret's eyes and saw his own panic reflected there. This had gone too far. "Rebecca," he said softly. "I need to tell you something." The cafe seemed to go quiet. Margaret reached for her daughter's hand, but Marcus gently shook his head. "I'm not Daniel," he said. "Daniel was supposed to be here, and I'm sure he would have been amazing. But I'm Marcus. I'm a widower with a 6-year-old daughter, and I lost my wife 3 years ago to cancer." He swallowed hard. "Your mom was sitting here, terrified and desperate to protect you from more pain, and she asked me to pretend. I said yes because I know what it's like to want to shield the people you love from hurt. And I know what it's like to lose someone and feel like you'll never be whole again." Silence stretched between them. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, and Marcus braced himself for anger, for betrayal. Instead, she started to laugh, a raw, broken sound that turned into sobs. "I knew," she whispered. "The moment I walked in, I knew." Daniel had a scar above his left eyebrow. He was terrified of coffee, only drank tea. He was left-handed. She looked at Marcus. "But I wanted so badly to believe, just for a moment, that he was still here." Margaret was crying now too, reaching for her daughter. "I'm so sorry, baby. I just couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear that you were hurting and I was so far away and useless." Rebecca grabbed her mother's hands. "You're not useless. You're here. That's all I needed. Not a lie, not a fantasy. Just you, Mom. I came home because I needed you." They held each other, and Marcus quietly stood to leave, but Rebecca's voice stopped him. "Wait, please." She wiped her eyes. "What you did was crazy and kind and probably the strangest thing that's happened to me in a month of strange things. But you did it because you understood something about loss and love that most people don't. And I think my mom could see that in you." She paused. "Daniel would have liked you." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "My wife Sarah would have liked you too. She always said that the hardest part about grief isn't the big moments. It's the regular Tuesday afternoons when you realize they're not there to share them with." "Terrible, regular Tuesdays," Rebecca agreed softly. Margaret looked between them, something shifting in her expression. "Rebecca, why don't you stay in town for a while? Really stay. Not just a visit." Rebecca hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe I will." Marcus did leave then, but not before Rebecca asked for his number. "Maybe Emma would like a friend," she said. "I'm a children's librarian, and maybe we could have coffee sometime. Real coffee, with no pretending." 3 months later, Marcus sat in the same cafe, but this time Emma was with him, giggling at Rebecca's animated reading of a picture book. Margaret joined them, bringing cookies she'd baked. They'd become an unlikely family of sorts, bound not by blood or romance, but by the understanding that sometimes strangers become the people who help you remember how to live again. "You know," Rebecca said, catching Marcus's eye over Emma's head, "that terrible Tuesday turned out to be the beginning of something pretty good." Marcus smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. "Yeah," he agreed. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is show up for each other, even when we don't have all the answers." Emma looked up at them, confused but happy. "Are we a family now?" Margaret reached over and took her small hand. "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes families are the people who choose to show up on your hardest days." And in that moment, in a small cafe on an ordinary afternoon, 4 broken people discovered that healing doesn't mean forgetting the ones you've lost. It means honoring them by choosing to love and connect again, by extending grace to strangers, and by believing that even in grief, there's room for unexpected joy.